The Anglo-Saxon literature was full of values that they maintained in their own culture. Many of these values represented through writing connected to their way of living, like their religion, faith, and society. Like their society, Anglo-Saxon literature constantly represented values that contradicted one another because of Christianity and paganism greatly influencing each story. Most literary works in the Anglo-Saxon era told stories by adding in extensive values held by the Christians, but also included various practices and symbolism that referred to pagans. When you think of Christians and pagans, you most likely think of two complete polar opposites. For example, you could connect Christians to humility and followers of God and their faith, while pagans are barbarians filled with honor and bravery. So why did the Anglo-Saxons include such a bizarre mixture into their literature? Before we begin dwelling into Anglo-Saxon literature, you must understand what led to this.
Mini Anglo-Saxon Crash Course. The Anglo-Saxons portrayed such a clash of values in their storytelling because of their social situation. There has always been a contradiction in religion with the Romans and the Anglo-Saxons. When the Anglo-Saxons invaded Britain, the population was already Christians because of the Romans converting everyone previously during the Roman rule. Unfortunately for the Romans, their empire was crumbling, which led to them abandoning Britain. The Anglo-Saxons seized the opportunity to take over. They converted these people into their religious beliefs, which was paganism. They remained pagans for years, until missionaries from Rome were sent to Britain to convert them to Christianity. This greatly influenced them because now the Anglo-Saxons were practicing both Christianity and paganism. This explains why all their literature of this period included symbolism towards both sides of religion, despite being so distinct from each other. This was evidently represented through the literature by using storytelling to represent values attached to both Christianity and paganism, but contradicting each other. The first story we'll be analyzing is The Dream of the Rood. This is a biblical Christian story told from the rood or the tree that Jesus is nailed on's point of view, but also from a dreamer's point of view. It tells the story of a person who's evidently a follower of religion and Christianity. He dreamed of the tree that the crucifixion occurred on. He glorified this tree and practically kneeled beneath it because it was so astonishing to him, since it symbolized his whole purpose in life, which is to follow the word of his Savior, since the dreamer has the Christian value of faith. The point of view switches into the roods, when Jesus is being crucified. When the Lord was climbing up the rood represented one of the greatest Christian values, which is humility. Because he decided to give himself no importance, deal with the pain and the fear of having Jesus climb up it and being terrorized for the sake of saving humanity. Not only this, but another Christian value represented in this story was the rood being courageous when having to stand still for Jesus Christ to be taken by God. The rood had faith in his religion since its very creation. Towards the end, when the dreamer was speaking again, he was praying, which is a Christian practice. Faith is a message expressed throughout the whole story in both points of views. So there is no doubt that this story was greatly influenced by Christianity, but somehow paganism made its way into this immensely religious story. Despite being a biblical retelling of the crucifixion, this story portrayed many paganistic values and practices that contradicted with the Christian values. While yes, the part where the Savior is being nailed on the cross is a paganistic practice, the paganism goes far beyond just that small part. The way the whole character of the rood was portrayed was paganistic because he was a hero in the story. Heroism is strongly connected to pagans. The rood depicted qualities of a hero, like bravery for the sake of humanity. Honor, which is also a pagan value, usually follows along with acts of heroism, and this story was no failure to that. The tree was honored and glorified years later for its courageous acts during the crucifixion. The next Anglo-Saxon literary work we'll be discussing is Judith. This is a biblical retelling of the killing of Holofernes by a woman named Judith for the purpose of saving her people from the Assyrians. While the story itself is not fully Christian because it follows a story from another religion, it still contains Christian elements and follows the guidelines of the religion itself. When Judith had to find strength to commit such a hard act as to kill Holofernes, she prayed to God and asked the Lord to give her what she needed in order to not feel fear. Her faith in God is what gave her such an honorable Christian value to possess, which is courage. Judith, like the root in the dream of the root, had the value of humility. She gave her life no importance when she put herself at risk for the sake of saving her people from the terror of the Assyrians. Judith resembled Jesus Christ when he was willing to sacrifice his own life for the sake of humanity. The story being biblical in nature makes it religious, but paganism is not excluded from this poem just because it is biblical. Judith is immensely paganistic, whether it's from the values or from the practices shown from the story. Towards the beginning of the story, Holofernes and the Assyrians were all drinking heavily and feasting. After this, Judith was brought to the room for Holofernes to do as he wanted with her. These kind of barbaric actions are all connected to paganism. In the poem, Judith committed one of the most recognized pagan practices, which was beheading. The beheading of Holofernes in this story also led into another great example of paganism, which was heroism. Heroes are intertwined with paganism, and Judith was a perfect example of a pagan hero. She had all the qualities of a hero, like bravery, but she also had the paganistic side of a hero, like great honor. She took the head of Holofernes almost as a trophy for her bravery, and she was glorified for saving her people.
The next Anglo-Saxon poem we'll be discussing is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Unlike the previous two stories discussed, this story wasn't directly religious because of the nature of the story, but it was more Christian because of the values portrayed throughout this story. Since the very beginning, Sir Gawain was shown to have the most important Christian value, which is humility. Humility was portrayed in the character of Sir Gawain when the Green Knight visited the king and proposed to him the idea of the beheading game. The king ran the risk of getting beheaded, so Sir Gawain decided to give his life no importance and took the king's place for him in this deadly game. Sir Gawain had faith in his religion and used his faith by praying to give him the courage to continue his harsh trip of finding the Green Knight. Another Christian value depicted throughout this story is loyalty. Loyalty is a quality that Sir Gawain possessed in this story. We saw this depicted when, even after so long had passed, Sir Gawain kept his word about finding the Green Knight to complete the game, despite him knowing how dangerous the game is. While there were Christian values, like all other Anglo-Saxon literature, there were also pagan values. To start off, the whole reason Sir Gawain stepped up to take the king's place was because he wanted to gain honor, since he felt like the weakest guard. Honor is connected to paganism. The whole premise of the beheading game is paganistic as well, because beheading is a paganistic practice. The Green Knight demonstrates paganism as well because he is a supernatural being. Heroism is also portrayed in the story in Sir Gawain, and heroism is linked to paganism.
The last poem we'll be discussing is the most paganistic one out of all of them, Beowulf. Beowulf was full of paganistic practices and principles. One of the most obvious paganistic symbols used to represent the pagan principle of honor was Grendel's arm being ripped off. When Beowulf defeated Grendel, he bit off his arm and hung it up as if it was a trophy honoring him for defeating the demon. Another gruesome but undoubtedly paganistic symbol in this poem was the decapitation of Grendel's mother. The act of decapitation is a pagan practice. This pagan practice was used in this poem to represent Beowulf's heroism and the honor he held. Beowulf being a hero was pagan in this story as well. As I stated with previous stories, heroism is connected to paganism, and Beowulf is the face of a true pagan hero. Despite us viewing this story as barbaric, savage, and overall heroic in a deep sense, it still contains Christian elements in it. One of the biggest ways that Christianity is portrayed in this poem is through the main character and hero, Beowulf. He's depicted as this strong and almost invincible hero, but the truth is that he gets his strength from his faith in God. He prays to God to give him strength to defeat the evil demons causing terror on Herod. His gift comes from his belief that God will save him in his time in need, so he has trust in the Savior. The plot of the story was also a parallel to Christianity itself. Christianity represents the good versus the evil because it's God and heaven and the great values versus the devil, hell, and sin. Beowulf were allowed this by doing good versus evil by having Beowulf being the good and having all this honorable values and qualities, while he had to defeat the evil in the story, which was Grundle and Grundle's mother. In conclusion, the Anglo-Saxons had a clash in their own religious beliefs in their culture, which was vastly represented in their storytelling. This created an amazing blend of values in their literature that may have contrasted one another, but still left readers impressed. Anglo-Saxon poets knew how to perfectly tie in two religions that were complete opposites to create one story. Biblical stories like the Dream of the Rood were so Christian-based, yet somehow still pagan. On the other side of the spectrum, we had one of the most pagan stories, Beowulf, adding in Christianity as well. When you think of Christians, your mind doesn't connect to anything relating to that of a pagan, but Anglo-Saxon poets made that work out perfectly in their writing.